Hello and welcome to Toolbox for the Trades. My name is Amanda Salvatore, and today I speak with Keenan Baird, a board certified master arborist with passion and know how. His hot take: there is a missing middle market when it comes to the tree care industry. We dive into why that is, where to find inspiration as an owner, and how to differentiate your business through transparency. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Keenan Baird, you are the owner of GreenRoots in Nashville, Tennessee. And today we are going to be discussing the missing middle market when it comes to the tree care industry and how to move towards modernizing the industry. Thank you so much for coming on Toolbox for the Trades.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm just excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you. I don't believe we've ever had an arborist on, so I'm really excited to get into it and hear your thoughts on the industry. But first and foremost, we always like to start with a little bit of an icebreaker here. So, what is the biggest misconception people have about being an arborist?
I think that there's two misconceptions and that the first one plays into the second one. The first being that all tree workers are arborists. There are tree workers and tree care companies that are great at the technical work of pruning and removing trees, but that doesn't mean that they're experts in plant health care or arboriculture. They're just very technically skilled in the disassembly of woody biomass. The second misconception is that it's difficult to become a arborist, or rather that becoming a certified arborist is a destination rather than a waypoint in a journey. Just like any other credential, becoming a certified arborist, in my opinion, is kind of the starting point of where any professional arborist should want to be as they're advising the public and their customers on managing their trees.
Speaking of this unique industry that you have found yourself in, tell us the story about how you got here.
Yeah, it all started when I wanted to go to scout camp as a teenager. I really wanted to go to the National Boy Scout Jamboree. It was in West Virginia. The troop was going to do a 3-week journey through all of the U.S. historical sites before it. It was an expensive trip because it was, traveling from Arizona across the country with a Boy Scout troop and then going to the National Jamboree. My parents were very supportive. They said, you can go, but you have to pay for it. Thought about who I knew. And the summer before that, I had helped out with construction job site cleanup, and I knew that I didn't want to do that again. So I called my brother-in-law, and his family owned a tree care company in Mesa, Arizona, and I asked for a job. And they had me out there dragging branches from the tree to the chipper all summer long. In the backyards of my friends while they swam in the pools, I was the teenager out working, sweating my butt off in the Arizona heat.
So you get to go to this Boy Scout Jamboree. You have this experience in tree care. How did you find yourself owning your own business?
I owned my version 1 of GreenRoots when I went to college in Idaho. I moved up there and started working. And this 91-year-old guy owned the apartment building, and he needed a handyman. And he had trees that needed pruned, and so I went and did that for him. I had all my gear. My wife's like, well, if you can do that and pay our bills, then why don't you just do that while we're in school? And so that first year I did GreenRoots version 1 myself. The next year I partnered up with another arborist in town that was about my age, and we put a partnership together, had a different name, learned a lot of valuable lessons as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old in college, in a business partnership, probably doing everything wrong. But again, hard work gets you through it. We're no longer business partners, but we're still best friends.
I know you're now a board certified master arborist. This is a title that is held by less than 3% in the industry. So, why was it so important for you to reach that certification?
Maybe part of it's that I got a chip on my shoulder. When you're the young guy, people see your age and maybe write you off a little faster. And when you have credentials, experience, and education behind you, it definitely grabs people's attention and respect a little faster. I think another part of it is that arboriculture at its foundation isn't removing trees, but it's plant health care and it's managing living organisms. And a board certified master arborist has to have 8 years of experience as a certified arborist or equivalent experience, whether that's education with college degrees or other qualifications and certifications that the International Society of Arboriculture offers. As someone that cares deeply about our environment and trees, being able to be that expert that can advocate for management strategies that maybe aren't removal, but informing tree owners of their options and the routes that we can take, it brings me a lot of joy. And with that certification, I feel like it's set me apart and opened doors and opportunities for me that I wouldn't have otherwise had.
I'd love to know, because you mentioned this before, that it's so much more than just tree removal. But I'm sure a lot of people are calling their landscape company when they might need something removed or they hear something from their insurance company. I have to ask, who is your ideal customer as an arborist?
First, I want to say you are absolutely right in the eyes of the general public. So, for people that aren't arborists or landscapers, if you walk outside of your house and you need something done, you're going to call your landscape maintenance company if you have one. Or if you don't have one, you're going to post on Facebook or Nextdoor and ask for who can do this. And you're going to get 100 recommendations of landscaping companies. And that's a big, I think it's an image problem with arborists and our arboriculture. But for me as an arborist, my ideal client is going to be commercial or high-end residential landscape design, build, maintain companies, because they're the ones that get the calls. And if they've got a board certified master arborist in their back pocket that they can subcontract work out to, I can have the benefit of having the lead flow, the consistent work, and being the guy that gets called to do the work. And they can have the knowledge that they're being treated by someone or taken care of by someone with the expertise. With that consistent lead flow, it helps me do a little more capacity planning instead of just waiting on the phone to ring. I know that if I'm working with these commercial landscape or residential landscape companies, like they're the ones that get those calls in the first place. And whether they refer those customers directly to me or subcontract the work out to me, having those contractor relationships is a keystone to my business model.
When we first chatted, I asked, what was your hot take on the industry? And especially as someone in tree care, very rarely do we get to really dive into this aspect of the industry. In your experience on this tree care side, you've mentioned that professionalization and adoption of base level tools is still quite minimal. Why do you think that is?
Professionalization in arboriculture, I think, is 10 years behind commercial landscaping. When I first started in the industry as a 14, 15-year-old on the tree care side, like I remember tree guys making fun of landscapers, right? And today I think you could almost flip the script on the professionalization of it. One of the reasons that I believe that tree care companies are so slow to adopt CRMs is because it is a technician driven job market. And most of the tree care companies that I know of are led by tree guys whose primary skill is tree climbing and, tree pruning and removal. And they're not people who've gone to business school or worked for, $1 million companies. They're people who recognized that they were exceptional in the technical skill that they had and that they could build a business around it. At the beginning of the podcast, you used a term, the missing middle market. From my experience, tree care companies scale to $1 million to $3 million, and then they get absorbed into national brands like Bartlett, Davey, Save a Tree, and a couple of other companies. In the landscape industry, especially in the last 10 years, you've had companies who have broken through the $3 million barrier and they do $5 million, they do $10 million, they do $15 million. And they've become aspirational for other landscape companies and something that you can look toward. To mention Marty Grunder and the Grow Group, where in a lot of cases, it's an open book. If you go to the Grow Conference, you can walk through other companies' operations. You get to learn from their leadership and management teams and how they do things. And there just simply isn't a similar experience for tree care companies. And I think part of that's because there's not that middle market between the hundreds of $1 million companies and the $1 to $3 million companies.
So let me summarize what I'm hearing. When a tree care company is breaking through that 1 million mark into this middle market territory, very often they're being absorbed and acquired into other landscaping companies to provide that service and that boutique service. So now there is this gap and this lack of mentorship within this middle ground, and also a lack of a aspiration model, if you will. So where do you find that mentorship and that inspiration if you're not seeing it within your industry?
Yeah, looking to sister industries like landscaping, in a lot of ways labor based. The technical aspects of your work are maybe a little higher than what a homeowner typically wants to do or to learn how to do, and requires some specialized equipment to do in a really effective manner. If you can look towards your sister industries, and whether that's HVAC and plumbing or whether it's landscaping, and you can meet with those business owners and learn the lessons that they've learned and talked to them about what they're doing, you can take the nuggets that apply for your business and your industry and put them into practice.
Yeah, creating that community and also seeing something that is similar to the structure of what you're working in, being able to mirror that in your own industry. What do you think needs to happen in the tree care industry for companies to thrive in this middle ground?
I think it's already beginning to happen. But as time progresses, I really hope that more of the companies that are hitting those revenue goals of 3 million, 5 million, $10 million, instead of looking at the attractive offer from private equity or from national tree care arboriculture companies, that they take a minute, they look at the baby that they've built, and they hold on for just a little bit longer so that they can mentor and lead other tree service owners.
Is there any place within the community, in your industry, that you would suggest others to look towards when it comes to finding mentors or others to look up to?
I think one thing that you can do is, if you spend any time on LinkedIn, look for the companies that are posting about their wins and their losses, and find the managers and the leadership team on those companies. An example of this, and it's not LinkedIn, but on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, there's a tree company owner that is in that middle market. And he and I connected over Twitter and have talked several times. He's invited me down to come and tour their facility, which I hope to take him up on in the next year or so. Don't be afraid to start the conversation with other business owners. The other thing I would say, even the other business owners in your own market. Something else that in the landscape industry, I think there's more of than in the tree care industry, is looking at it less like a competition, but more that all rising tide lifts all boats. The tree care industry is very competitive, and there's not an abundance mindset where people feel like they're all competing for the same leads, for the same customers. If you can get over that mindset and think there's enough trees in Tennessee for anyone who wants to be a tree care company owner here, and the more professional that we all are, the higher rates we can charge, the safer our crews and our workers will be, and better overall the public image of our industry will be. If we can kind of all get together and be friends, and if there's a lead that I can't handle and I'm friends with this other company owner, and I can either subcontract it out to him or refer the lead to him and grow that camaraderie, I think everyone's better off in that situation.
That's the way to go. Creating that community, creating a support system, and that open communication with each other, you're actually going to find more benefits than negatives when it comes to that.
Absolutely. And I know that a lot of companies feel like they need to be super secretive about how they estimate work or the prices that they're putting on jobs. But job estimating, all that estimating is an abstraction of labor and materials, right? Doesn't matter how you slice the pie, there's people that have to go out and do the work, and they have to commit capital and materials to performing that work on site. Maybe you have a secret special sauce in how you think about estimating that works for you. Realistically, if you can sit down with other business owners and discuss maybe jobs that you've both bid and you're friends together, and you can ask them, oh, I see that you bid it, a little higher than I did. Why was that? And maybe they saw something you didn't. You can both grow from that. As a business owner, I don't want to be the lowest bidder on jobs. I want to be estimating what it's going to cost me to perform the work. I want to cover my overhead costs. I want to achieve an acceptable net profit margin, but I don't want to be undercutting other people in the industry. I want to be the guy who can perform the work and differentiate myself. A book that was really impactful on me is called The Innovator's Solution by Clayton C. Christensen. He was a Harvard professor. And in The Innovator's Solution, he said that when a product is commoditized, and I would argue that a lot of the green industry is commoditized, there's very little that differentiates you from another company. You have to find a way to differentiate yourself. And whether that differentiation is through how quickly you can respond to the customer or how quickly you can complete the work, or whether that differentiation is your experience, education, or quality of work that's performed, if you can nail one of those items, you're going to grow your business, because now you're not competing on price, you're competing on a different level of service or product.
Well said. You touched on a couple of things that I would love to dive into. I know you have some operations that you're putting in place that are setting you apart. I know that you talked about estimating. Let's start there. You have this formula, and I think it is so cool. So tell our listeners about how you do your estimates.
I believe price transparency is great, right? If a customer goes to your website, like, what you're trying to do is tell them what it's going to cost and get them to call you. Like, that's the purpose of a website. And when it comes to tree removal specifically, people can be afraid of what it's going to cost, and sometimes with good reason, because if there's power lines or cranes are involved, or you've got a terrible slope right where the tree is, and it's going to be a pain to get the tree out of the 30-inch gate in the backyard. All of these are different levers that can affect the cost of the service. And so I'm a data geek. I collect really detailed records of trees that I've pruned and removed. I've got another arborist friend that does the same. And with his help, we did some math on prices we charged for tree removals. We kind of looked at what the levers on those jobs were. And I mean, it was hundreds of jobs that we looked at. And we came up with what I consider to be a pretty consistent formula that works for us in our market for tree removal. And it's based off of the height of the tree, the diameter of the tree at breast height, how many secondary branches come off that are larger than 18 inches. And then the other levers on there are things I mentioned, like power lines, access, slope, whether a crane needs to be involved for the tree removal. And I have that on my website for free. I mean, people can go on there, put in their information, fill out the kind of three big ones, which are height, diameter, and those number of branches. And they instantly get a price range of what it could cost them from a low end to a high end. That shows really high intent. When they fill out that form, I get a ping on my phone, and I try and call them within 2 or 3 minutes of getting that ping, so that,
Wow.
at that moment, they're already thinking about tree removal. I'm on their mind. If they fill it out, they're surprised when I call so quickly.
It's a great system, really honing in on that idea of speed to lead, which I would love to talk to you about as well. This idea of speed to lead. Tell me about that. You're already doing it with this estimation formula and the way that you have it set up on your site, but tell me about this speed to lead.
When you get a lead, the faster that you can communicate with them, get a price, and get them on the phone, the more likely they are to close. A really influential sales trainer that I attended seminars for would always say that time kills deals. The longer you have a deal on the oven, the less likely it is to close. And so if you can be transparent communicative, provide value to your customers, you're going to close jobs. And your problem is no longer going to be whether there's work on the books for next week. It's going to be whether you have the capacity to fulfill the work that you're selling.
I know that last week, from when we're recording this, last week, you guys had a pretty nasty ice storm. I'd love to hear about how that played out for you and for your business.
So I live here in Nashville, Tennessee. 2 weeks ago, they started saying snow was coming. Everyone was preparing. And then the newscasters were saying it's going to be Snowmageddon. And everyone started freaking out. Generators were sold out everywhere. Sunday night, freezing rain comes in. And the water hits trees, plants, pavement, and instantly turns to ice. It turned from a snowstorm to an ice storm, and just an incredible, truly heartbreaking amount of damage to homes, but also to plant material, vegetation here in Middle Tennessee in a way that I've never seen in my lifetime. And talking to other arborists who have been in this area for 30 plus years, they said there hasn't been a storm this bad since 1994, and Nashville's grown immensely since then. Monday morning, my crews go out without me. I've got, a list of work for them to go and do. And then by Tuesday, I'm out on site assessing trees, getting prices for customers that have called in. And in a weekend, today's Wednesday, in a week and 3 days, we did half a year's worth of revenue. I brought up subcontractor crews that I'd worked with from out of state. To handle capacity, talk about a growth moment. And as a small business, my company launched March of last year. Year one, revenue expectations aren't always great. So maybe this is just year two, we've got everything dialed in. But to do half a year's worth of revenue in a week, and to be able to manage that where my office staff is myself and my mom, would not have been possible without the investment into Aspire that we've made. I'd say that I'm an exceptional user of the software, and I have it set up the way that I want it to be set up so that I can handle things like this. But yeah, without Aspire, I would not have been able to handle the volume of work in a single week with two people managing the phones and going out, giving estimates and performing the work.
Investing in technology allowed you to help more people and grow grow exponentially in literally a week. I know that a lot of people, when they see the investment, not only financially, but also time, when it comes to software, that it can be wildly intimidating. But when you hear stories like this, when you hear that you had that infrastructure in place, so you were able to execute at a high capacity in a short amount of time, it really makes sense as to why you need to get out of that pen and paper and really dive into a software that you can utilize in times of an emergency.
Yeah, and I had never needed to set up the subcontractor portal in Aspire, right? And this is like last Tuesday night, like midnight, long day of doing tree work, climbing pine trees. I'm like sitting there getting my subcontractors entered, schedule boards built out, sending them emails, being able to, like, I'm still in implementation on Aspire, right? Like,
holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm so sorry to my implementation manager. But we did so much to get to where we were so that we could handle and have the capacity to perform at that high level. Would not have been possible without a CRM, period. And I'm grateful that it's a CRM that I love and that I've got so much experience with.
Yeah, it sounds like you were building the ship as you were taking off. Like, really, that's like, yeah. Wow. That's an incredible story, even just to understand that you're in the middle of implementation and what that looks like and how complicated that can feel. I'm so glad that you were able to find the support and be able to execute such an incredible week and so much help for your community. I love that.
It was an incredible week. Tuesday, the Associated Press came out and did a video spotlight on my crew and myself. And it was on all the news networks locally. And it was really great to be able to help people. Last Sunday, we went out with our church community and helped out people that didn't have the resources to pay for tree removal and cleanup, because one, right now everyone's over capacity and rates go up when demand is high and supply stays the same. But I really believe in giving back to my community and helping out the people that are in need.
I love that initiative. There's nothing better than feeling useful when there is a crisis. And I am sure that Tennessee, like you said, didn't have this infrastructure and wasn't necessarily ready for a storm like this, because this isn't your average everyday winter storm. So being able to help and facilitate that and help the community is incredible. And congratulations. That's really great work.
Thank you.
Is there anything else about your operations that you think others should put in place when aspiring to this middle market company?
I think that the earlier you can define your standard process for what you're doing, the better off you're going to be. If you're a small company doing $100,000, $200,000 of revenue, you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off a lot of the time. But in your slow seasons, if you can take the time to get one of your projects knocked out and document it really well, one, so that you as the business owner understand what goes into performing that part of your business. But two, when it's the responsibility of someone else, that you can make sure that they have the path to follow towards success. As a small business owner, year one in business, I mean, getting payroll set up properly and making sure that I'm compliant for my workers' compensation audits and my insurance audits, and making sure that everything is set up the way that it needs to be, which has been my goal and that I've executed on since, day one of my company. It's a mountain to climb, but once you've done it, and I encourage you, if you haven't done it, to do it. Once you've done it, you end up understanding so much better, like why you need to charge what you charge, and also what it requires to operate at a high level. Like if you can't do some of the what should be mandatory legal requirements, you're not going to be able to do the other parts of your business well, and you're always going to feel like you're behind the eight ball.
Keenan, before we go, is there anything that you would wish we got to talk about, or something you want to leave our listeners with?
I think that something I would like to talk about is really getting a handle on your costs as a business owner. Aspire has the dual overhead recovery and their pricing markup table with the net profit, right? But that only works if you understand what your costs are before you're building out your pricing table for all of your services and divisions in Aspire. But if you're not on Aspire, it can be even more difficult to understand what you should be charging, because maybe you don't have a handle on what your overhead costs are. And if you don't have a handle on those costs, you're going to struggle to swim and not drown in this business market. Like, you need to know what it costs you to run your business to be successful.
What would you suggest the first step being when getting a handle on the cost?
Find a really good accountant and find an even better bookkeeper. Whether you have an aptitude for finance or not, I studied agriculture business in college. Accounting's not my strong suit. And understanding that if I'm not great at something, I need to find someone who is, that I can trust and work with on my deficiencies. I think the very first step is getting a handle on and understanding what your indirect costs are and what your fixed costs are every month. So then you can look towards what your variable costs are and move that into your pricing model. That book I mentioned to you, Innovator's Solution, right? It talks about disruption theory in businesses, right? And disruptive businesses, there's two modes of disruption, right? There's new technology, and then there's low-end disruption, right? So a company that can come in and offer the same services as you at a lower price with very little difference to the end consumer is always going to disrupt you in your business. As landscape and tree care company owners, we intuitively understand this when we talk about half price Harry or Chuck in a truck, right? It's very easy to see other businesses that are really on that low end disruption cycle. Going back to what we talked about earlier on commoditization, you need to be able to differentiate yourself. And so, whether that is by adopting new technologies and operating at a higher level, or by doing those other things that we've discussed, like you really, really, really need to dig into how you can be a disruptor instead of a disrupted company.
Well said. I love that. Keenan, honestly, I hope that people took notes while they were listening to this because there's so much good stuff in here. Truly, like, I think that you have a great handle on taking your business to the next level and how to create a business that really speaks to what people need and is different from the rest of the pack. I think you got some really great advice in here. So, thank you so much for all of that information. And thank you for coming on Toolbox for the Trades. This was awesome.
Believe it or not, it was the best hour of my life.
I told him to say that, you guys. I told him to say that. But honestly, you know what? I'll take it. Thank you so much for coming on. And we'll catch up with you soon and hear how it's going.
Thank you, Amanda.